Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's ShareNett event. I am Ian Kenyon with Cavendish Global, a partner on today's event and one of your moderators. Before we jump right in, though, for our first-time GoToWebinar users, let's take a moment and familiarize ourselves with the GoToWebinar interface. You'll notice for today's gathering, our audience is muted for your listening convenience. And whether you are joining us from a desktop or on a mobile device, please take a moment to identify the question mark icon on your screen, as this will allow you to submit comments and questions throughout today's broadcast. And today's broadcast features a full panel discussion. The panel will be followed by a short Q&A session, and I highly encourage you to submit questions at any time during today's discussion. Any questions we cannot accommodate live, we will ensure they are addressed following today's event. And immediately following today's broadcast, you'll receive our event survey, which actually by joining in today's event, you should see that survey link in your chat box right now. And this short survey requests your feedback on today's events, our panelists, a few questions from the panelists for you, and the option to request introductions to our panelists. And our team and our panelists are grateful for your input on all these fronts. So without further delay, please allow me to introduce Kilty Mahoney, who is joining us to open today's event. Hey, Kilty.
Thanks, Ian. Welcome to today's event on charting the state of cybersecurity. I'm Kilty Mahoney, Managing Director with ShareNett Securities. Over the past year, we've certainly witnessed a revolution of innovation and increased reliance on our digital infrastructure. And central to this is cybersecurity, all while the media continues to highlight data breaches, new risks to consumers and infrastructure, and other cyber threats that have implications for international relations as well as national security. So today, for our fourth event of 2021, we're going to take a deeper dive into the current state of cybersecurity in the US with an eye to its future. But first, as a brief refresher, I'll explain who we are. ShareNett is a private, members-only platform of professional investors, founded, designed, and owned by family offices, for family offices, to facilitate peer-to-peer investing in unique, highly curated opportunities. Our membership is diverse by design, powering a global network of approximately 400 families. We continue to welcome new members to enhance our platform, deal sourcing, and diligence capabilities, and thank you very much for joining us today. So now let's turn to today's main event. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Jason Gale, Managing Partner of Cyber Capital Partners. Jason has spent nearly 20 years advising government agencies and national labs, universities and accelerators alongside investors, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders on the challenges and opportunities that comprise the cybersecurity ecosystem. Jason, you'll discover, is a bit of a futurist and will be moderating a provocative discussion among three incredible individuals who have each worked deep within the federal government's cyber leadership and now bring their expertise and innovation to the private sector. Like you, I'm excited to hear what's ahead for American companies, entrepreneurs, and investors. Jason, thank you so much for joining us today. Let me turn it over to you to frame today's discussion.
Thank you, Kilty. Yeah, we are very excited to be here today. Thank you to ShareNett and Cavendish for hosting today's event. We certainly appreciate the opportunity. Thank you to the audience participants. Your time is valuable, and we intend to honor that by providing an informative, brief presentation followed by an engaging conversation that lays out the problems, the solution set, and the opportunities ahead. When we formed Cyber Capital Partners as an investment sub-advisor and management consultancy in 2010, cybersecurity was a nascent term, let alone industry. Today, we have reached the end of the beginning. The market understands the basic concepts. Most boards and executives have had many conversations around protecting the corporation's brand and reputation, the customer's data, and the bottom line. Our lawmakers and regulatory bodies have legislated industry's role and responsibilities in this field of cybersecurity. Cyber is big business. The national annual spend in 2019 was estimated at $156 billion. Gartner tells you that by 2027, cybersecurity will be a $500 billion a year business. The recently passed COVID Relief Act and the upcoming infrastructure bill are likely to add hundreds of billions of dollars in federal spend to these estimates. However, if we pull the camera back and look at the role and influence that cybersecurity has had in our country's, or has in our country's next 20 years, we see that the concept of cybersecurity has only started to mature. In the 20 years after 9/11, the United States spent $6.4 trillion on war and counterterrorism. What will our reaction be to a hypothetical cyber war? The public-private partnership between the defense industrial base expands dramatically when we include cybersecurity. Our conversation today is intended to look forward at the interdependency of our government and industry to protect our most essential operations, to improve the United States military strength and our national competitive position on trade and innovation. In reality, it's a conversation about reseeding American dominance. Daniel Day-Lewis's famous speech in the movie There Will Be Blood centers around telling the owner of an oil field an analogy, that the oil field is a milkshake. Mr. Day-Lewis's character takes a straw, reaches across, and drinks his milkshake, draining the oil field dry. Well, they say data is the new oil. China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others are reaching across the oceans on fiber optic lines, breaking into our networks, pilfering our data, and drinking our milkshake. We can see the 16 critical infrastructure sectors named by the Department of Homeland Security. Any compromises in the reliability of these sectors severely weakens the United States as a global economic force and military power. Every major war is won by disrupting the enemy's supply chain. Over the past 13 months, the United States has faced major threats to these sectors. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our healthcare and public health sector is overwhelmed. Even in the best of times, the United States reinvestment in infrastructure is woefully behind. Earlier this year, a significant storm hit Texas and threatened the food supply chain and energy grid, resulting in 57 deaths. Our nuclear energy is built on legacy devices and code that was never designed for cybersecurity. Our supply chain for much that we are dependent upon is in China and other parts of Asia. Our dependency on this concept of just-in-time logistics means that we would wait months for new motors, generators, and transformers to arrive from South Korea after a widespread attack on the US energy grid. The recent Russian SolarWinds Microsoft hack was followed by China's Microsoft attack, which both aimed at corporations across these critical infrastructure sectors and the US government. The military war games and diplomatic relationships continue to intensify as we see President Biden in heated exchanges with both countries 86 days into his presidency. The cyber war is hypothetical. The United States is entering the second phase of our national cybersecurity rollout. Though the US has understood the need for securing our network of computers since 1972, it was only in the mid-2000s that a national program began to take shape. The NSA ran US Cyber Command, but the nomenclature was still network security and information assurance. Cybersecurity wasn't a common term. The NSA and US leadership initially only required military agencies to harden their cyber posture. A few years later, added were the civilian agencies and the largest enterprises of healthcare and financial services. In October 2010, US Cyber Command was spun out from the NSA. The government made clear that it was unable to defend the country against attacks on private industry. Over the next decade, the enterprises and medium-sized businesses face growing cyber regulations and compliance costs. With this year's start of the CMMC compliance program for the defense industrial base, it's the first time that US small businesses must meet these requirements. We anticipate that this small business rollout repeats the pattern established before, first with the defense industrial base, and then requiring full participation across all 16 sectors. Returning to the concerns for our national security supply chain, the US government is fully aware of these challenges. Unlike the consolidated command and control under the dictatorships of Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, the United States has at best a fragmented, decentralized power over the states and businesses controlling our critical industries. As a result, The U.S. asks for voluntary participation by the private industry of these sectors. The Department of Homeland Security sub-agency, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, formed public-private partnerships to prevent and reduce the risks of disruption to our national supply chain. On CISA's website, the government spells out its dependency and has created coordinating councils in each sector. The second act of our national cybersecurity rollout is the maturing of these partnerships and the full participation by all entities within these sectors.